Welcome to KASS Live, our monthly live stream for Kentucky superintendents and key education leaders across the Commonwealth. Our guest this morning is Dr. John Nash. Dr. Nash is with the University of Kentucky Laboratory on Design Thinking and a preeminent expert in the field of AI and education. Dr. Nash, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jim. It's great to be here. It's great to be here with everybody. Good
Yeah,
conversation, I think we'll have. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. And, AI has moved faster in the last 12 to 18 months than most education policy or governance cycles, can keep up with. And from where you sit, what has changed most recently that superintendents may not fully appreciate yet? And kind of frame it in kind of what are we overestimating about AI right now? And maybe what are we underestimating?
Yeah, great question. You know, what's changed recently? It's more like sort of like what time is it right now? We're about 3 years in since OpenAI released ChatGPT, but it feels like, and that was such a shift. But now the shifts seem to be happening every minute practically. But I think the big thing to be thinking about now is that AI has gone from a niche tool to an everyday reality. It's being used by teachers and students every day. Classroom usage is up. Teachers are using it for lesson planning, feedback, insight into student progress. Students are using it obviously for writing, for projects, good use and not so good use. And I think the other thing that's sort of coming to light is that policies are kind of lagging behind adoption. So a lot of districts still don't have really clear AI guidance, and we don't have big state or federal policy on P12 use in schools, and so the guidelines are sort of lagging behind the use. So yeah, good question. When you think about like what are we overestimating and what are we underestimating, a couple of things come to mind when I think about that. I think I think we're overestimating the idea that AI is going to replace teachers. You see a lot of sort of, clickbait headlines that say, teacher displacement is coming. But I think the real thing that is in front of us is we need to be able to help teachers do more with less time and not replace them. So we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, today. But I think another thing is that we're in a state where we believe maybe that simply buying a tool will solve anything. I think there's some still temptation to be in a tool mode that a new platform will magically fix gaps that are out there in schools. But I think there's what we lag behind is the training and the capacity building to use tools like that. I also don't think everybody understands what AI is. You and I are using the term AI a lot right now, but really what we're talking about is generative AI and large language models and the chat bots. And so I think there's still a lot of hype versus reality. And so I think superintendents who feel that they're up to speed may still be relying on vendors telling them what to do rather than real tech literacy. And I think we can all sort of work together on that. Um, I think we're underestimating a couple of things too. I think we're underestimating how quickly students are adopting this on their own. I have all of us have a cell phone, and all of the apps inside that phone that are so popular have an AI chatbot at the top in the search bar. I think that there is an underestimated need on the training and not just the tech. I think professional development, as I was saying, kind of lags behind adoption. And I think we all still need to be thinking and worrying about ethical and accuracy challenges inside these chatbots. Generative AI, I use these tools almost every day. They still hallucinate. They still embed bias in their answers, and that can degrade the academic work that we want learners to do if it's not handled right. And so I think that we can be thinking about that. So, yeah, those are some things that are coming to mind, Jim.
Yeah, yeah. Well, definitely, mirrors some of the things I've been reading about, that, it is a tool, it's a powerful tool. It
Mhm.
can help teachers and students kind of leverage their time usage. My book club, in fact, my month, we did a book study on AI, and it was
Yeah.
pretty interesting. But I had a professor on, expert on machine learning, but he talked a lot about it, using it with his students. But he emphasized, teaching students how to ask it the right questions. The prompts
Mhm.
and the questions that you use are key. And that's one thing that I've tried to emphasize, in my realm of influence is that you still have to have expertise. It doesn't replace expertise. But it can help make you smarter, but you have to ask it the right questions and give it the right
Mhm.
instructions. But you kind of alluded to teachers and students are already using it. So and a lot of times that's whether districts officially know it or not. So kind of what's happening out there organically in the field. Maybe dive in a little bit more about that, and how should superintendents be thinking about leadership and oversight?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're right. AI is being already used in your systems. Folks who are watching this, teachers are planning it, using it to plan at night. The students are completing work at home. And when there's no clear guidance and you're not sure what everybody's doing, people don't just stop what they're doing, they improvise. And when they start improvising, then your leadership hasn't really disappeared. It's just been sort of outsourced and flattened. So I think that the idea is, firstly, get to know what's going on out there in your campuses. Um, Teachers are already using it as personally, probably not even district approved all the time. They're doing planning and differentiation, often in good ways. They're drafting outlines for lessons, they're rewriting directions for clarity, maybe for neurodivergent students and other learners who need to have instructions differentiated for them. They're using it for feedback, they're creating comment banks, they're writing next step feedbacks, making rubrics. And there's some messy parts. This is all sort of clean and useful. It can be. What the messy part is, I think, is where teachers start to dive into areas where we're even asking if students are using it well, but they're experimenting with AI to help evaluate student writing or checking alignment to rubrics or generating exemplars. And that's where it can get tricky because of the way in which, as I noted before, the models are still hallucinating. They're still not perfect in every way. And so we need to make sure that that kind of that knowledge is out there about the accuracy of what the teachers are creating if they're using it for grading or integrity uh, checks on students. Um, they're also, of course, as we know, spending a lot of time asking, is the stuff in front of me the student's work? And so
Hmm.
AI is creating a pretty big burden around authenticity and whether the student work is the student work. And so it's good for us to think about ways in which teachers can address that. Um, yeah.
Yeah. So, well, lots of things to think about, and kind of what those new leadership responsibilities that the introduction of AI have for superintendents, and even in districts that may not be doing much with AI, there's things to think about. So how do superintendents approach their board? How they brief their boards on AI without creating, either unrealistic expectations or unnecessary fears, especially when we're still trying to figure this out ourselves and kind of build the plane as it flies.
Yeah. That's a great question. And I think that before you think about what you want to say to the board, depending on whether you've approached them or not, I mean, maybe I'll sort of take the tack. Let's say you haven't talked to them at length about this. I think firstly, there's some new sort of leadership responsibilities that AI introduces for superintendents before they even go to their board that they need to think about. The first is that you're starting to lead this kind of shadow system that you didn't authorize. So even if you haven't adopted anything, your staff, your students, your teachers, they're using generative AI on personal accounts, and that makes this sort of invisible practice visible enough now to where you can kind of start to think about governing it. So first move maybe is to run a quick AI use inventory and ask across instruction and operations, what's happening out there? Are you guys using tools? No judgment here, just like get to know what's going on. It's almost like, you remember the days of bring your own device?
Yeah.
You know, and so I think it's sort of like everybody's sort of bringing their own, it's BYO AI, bring your own AI. And so how were you thinking about managing that back in the day? You're also now, you're responsible more for guardrails more than approval. So the superintendents really don't have to predict the future of AI, but I think what they do have to do is start to set some clear expectations on what's okay and what's not across administrative work, across instructional work. Think about some accountability paths, like who's going to decide when we'll use it instructionally, administratively, for purchasing, for analysis, for research, and what happens when it goes wrong, and then try to be consistent across the school so that the principals know that they're not making this up on the fly, which I imagine several feel like they may be doing that. And so then you start to own the AI readiness as this organizational capability. And once you can start to do that, then you can think about, well, what do I now talk about to my board? Because the board represents the community, and they're going to be each board member is going to have their own sort of ethical stance, understanding, beliefs about the use of generative AI in their school district. And so let's pretend for a moment, because we're time limited, Jim, so I'll just say, what if we were going to just make a briefing for sort of the first time? Here's what I might recommend. 3 slides, 10 minutes, slide 1. Folks, AI is already in the system. So our teachers and students are using it. They're using it informally. They're planning. They're using it for feedback, writing support, tutoring. So we're not starting from zero. We're actually just, I'm coming to you saying I'm governing around reality. And then second slide, so what's going to be our posture? Our posture is going to be safe experimentation and some clear guardrails. And so you can start to say things out loud like, we're not going to chase every tool that's out there that the vendors throw at us. We're going to think carefully about setting some durable guidelines that are going to survive the tool changes. Like we said at the top of our little show today, it's changing every minute. So how can we set some durable guidelines that will survive changes? And then we're going to prioritize what we already know to do well, which is privacy, access, and learning quality. And so, and now logically they might say, well, okay, then what are you going to do? And say, well, in the next 60 to 90 days, we're going to inventory our current use. We're going to find out how people are using it, how kiddos are using it. We're going to publish some staff and student guidelines in plain language that makes sense for the way we want our learners to grow in our system. And we're going to create a pathway so that we know when vendors throw contracts and tools and things at us, we know it's going to fit for what we want to do. And then do PD. It's just, we're in another sort of innovation here that deserves the capacity building and the professional development that we want to have so that it's successful. But I think that those are some things. You got to normalize uncertainty, basically. We have to lead without perfect answers. And so if you have clear principles and a review cycle, then we can start to move forward without really having anything sort of bad happen.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that lens, legal liability lens. What conversations should superintendents be having right now with their legal counsel and or insurance carriers about AI related risk and liability?
Well, yes. Things that you should be discussing now is, I don't want the lawyers to solve the AI problem, but we do want to ask them to help you understand how you're going to map your exposure and reduce it. I think the first thing to remember is that if your personnel, your staff, and particularly your teachers are bringing their own AI to the table, and they're using it to develop work. Student data privacy and records knowing about that is paramount. And so we don't want teachers using their personal ChatGPT account and uploading student names and student papers into it and doing grading, because that would be a violation of the student privacy. So we need to ask everyone, what's going to count as an education record? Is everybody clear that student privacy is paramount? How are we going to handle it when parents or students request information about whether your AI is touching student records and student work? And so FERPA is an anchor here, and so everybody should be kind of up on that. There's dialogue now going on about vendor contracts and third-party risk. And so if you are buying something to use, like I'm not calling anybody out here, but typical tools like Magic School or others that you might be considering using, how do those contracts talk about data use, data retention, model training? Will it use your student work to train the AI models in the future? Are we going to prohibit vendors from using district data to train their models? And so those are some of the sort of community ethical questions that districts should sort of settle on so they know what they want to do. And then staff use is important. In the superintendent's office, you might be thinking about HR. So again, confidential information, IEP details, discipline notes, are those going to accidentally end up in a system that is not private or does not have privacy guidelines set around it? And then cyber issues around coverage in response to AI related incidents. This is sort of out of my league, but I know that insurance is important. And so are there exclusions that you should know about? Are there controls that would reduce the risks around the use, the kind of insurance that you need to be safe against cyber issues inside it?
Lots of things to think about, but our core is is around teaching and learning, and and
Yeah.
how we can really leverage it in curriculum instruction assessment. And so how do we move from AI detection and think about guardrails and maybe even a punishment mindset? I've read some in the media about people trying to ban it, to actually rethinking what we assess and how we assess it, and use it to advance student learning.
Yeah. This is super important, and I love this question. This has sort of been my sweet spot for the last couple of years. I think if it could be allowed, I'm just going to name the problem plainly. We're trying to use 20th century assessment logic to police a 21st century tool, and so I'll also be plainly spoken about AI detectors. They're unreliable, they're inconsistent, and most importantly, they just don't improve learning. When AI detectors are coming into the workflow, you're just pushing teachers into enforcement roles and students into an adversarial role. And for me, that's kind of a dead end. So I think the leadership shift here is to stop asking questions like, well, did AI help the student do this work? And start asking, what evidence of thinking do we actually need to know the students are reaching their learning outcomes? And I think that reframes assessment from policing products to really the visibility of the process we want students to do in their learning journey. So we hear talk about, well, we need the work to be rigorous. Well, what does rigor mean in this generative AI world? I don't think rigor means doing the schoolwork without AI. Rigor doesn't mean having students write in blue books. I think rigor is getting them to do the thinking that can't be outsourced to AI. So in practice, that means we're emphasizing the good, deeper learning principles, decision making and judgment of kids, having them explain their reasoning, assignments that let them do iterations and revisions so that they can then come back and explain what their work is like, working in the local contexts, and really using reflection on the choices that they make and defending those choices. I think if AI can do the task end to end with no student thinking required, then that task probably wasn't assessing what we hoped it was supposed to assess.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Well, there's Owens. He's popped up on us. That maybe we have a question.
We do, and I had to mute my microphone because I'm screaming amen back here every 2 seconds, Dr. Nash. So I'm really interested in the whole professional development piece. And questions come through. It's really struck a nerve, struck a chord with me. There's a ton of resources out there that are floating around, but right now it seems like teachers and leaders are sort of having to select those things on their own, and we're not seeing a lot of professional development opportunities around this. And I'm wondering, is what's on the cusp of this? Like you said, I appreciate when you said things lag behind the leading edge here. But what's out there now? Are there some things that you know of, or what's happening at the university level that is helping promote this idea of really solid professional development for everybody in education as we move forward here? Because it seems like we're chasing it rather than being able to lead it.
Sure. Yeah, I think that, I mean, without naming any specific names or programs, but I will say that in the last year, I've been impressed with the work that OVEC did in creating opportunities for teachers and school leaders to come together to think about the ways in which generative AI is playing a role in helping advance critical thinking work around. And I think later this year in 2026, they have another edition of their Kentucky Educators AI work. At the university, we're also in a similar situation, sort of not struggling per se, but we have a need to think about when generative AI is most useful in what sorts of learning situations. And so I think I'm sorry that I don't have like a specific go do this training, because it's more like what I was saying with Jim a minute ago, with back in sort of when we were doing one-to-one computing, bring your own device. We were thinking about what is it that we need to know to make these successful. It's not throwing more computers at kids, or in this case, it's not opening up more chatbots for everybody, but rather what is it we want to achieve with learners, and then how do we do the professional development and tech development literacy to bring people up to the readiness levels we want.
And here's another question that's come in on the learning outcomes. Let's say once students have participated and they have been through the learning process, post-internet, once the internet came online, we didn't see much change in the learning outcomes. It didn't change much. So the Kentucky standards are still sort of largely the same. Mm-hmm. Might AI, this is a really great question, might AI lead to different learning expectations on the back end?
That's interesting, yeah. Well, if I understand the question correctly, I think that the profile of a graduate, if I could use that term, mm-hmm. for Kentucky learners has evolved to a place where we now know what we want our students to be able to know, do, and say to be successful in the world. I think the question now, particularly with the presence of generative AI, is then, are all of the learning activities and assessments that we have in place, have they kept up and been modernized, as it were, to meet the ability to achieve that graduate profile? And I think that's where, so to the extent that we have, as my comment before, if you have assignments that can be used by AI from beginning to end, then we may not be engaging in the kinds of learning activities that will reach the level of the profile we want. And so I think it's all about thinking about, what does authentic assessment look like? If we want students to be thinkers, deeper learning thinkers, then we need to have the kinds of activities inside the classrooms that achieve that. And I think that's where we haven't maybe caught up.
Yeah, well, there's so many opportunities out there when I think about it. Maybe think about when we started that flipped classroom thinking back in the day when we got access to this technology, and start thinking about what kids are doing when they're actually with us, and so how AI can help us. But I love just framing it, kind of what do the kids have to do if they can use AI to create the answer from start to finish, then maybe what we're asking to do is not really up to snuff. But if we can think about is what we're asking to do, making them become better critical thinkers, problem solvers, communicators, those kinds of creative, thinking and work, that those are the kind of things we're looking for. And then when I think about our workforce challenges in Kentucky, and I think about this dream of moving to, an accountability that incentivizes more vibrant learning experiences, which kind of meld into this whole conversation we've just been having. But given our ongoing educator shortages and challenges, is AI an opportunity to realistically help, with retention, workload, improvements, working conditions, and even, helping prepare educators to be more effective, or is that overpromising?
Yeah. No, I think Kentucky, like many states, is dealing with a persistent educator shortage. It's a problem. And so I think the honest question is, does AI actually help, or is it just sort of wishful thinking? I don't think AI is not going to fix working conditions. It's not going to solve the compensation issues. It's not going to replace professional respect. But I think that with it can help with the cognitive load, which is one of the quiet drivers of burnout. When teachers report real relief, they find it when they're using generative AI to draft lesson materials that are built on evidence that they've used to put in there in a safe system, to modify and differentiate texts for different learners. So I think what matters is how the leaders are going to frame this. It's not about doing more, but more about giving time back to do what matters most. I think AI is a capacity extender, potentially, if thought about correctly, not a replacement of teachers. And so I think the strong districts are going to be explicit about where AI is appropriate, where we can be explicit about where it's not. I think that's key. Supporting teachers at every step of the way and learning how to design AI resilient instruction. And that goes back to our idea of, so if we're going to meet the profile, we need AI resilient instruction. And then, if I can be so bold, Jim, to say what the weak leadership might look like, it's silent tolerance, sudden crackdowns, inconsistent enforcement across the schools. The kiddos know what each teacher wants or needs with regard to AI from period to period. They move from first period to second period, or they go from language to science, and they don't know what to expect, or they know that it's going to be different anyway, from teacher to teacher. So being thoughtful across the whole district is going to be good. Shared norms, shared language, shared responsibility. That takes the guesswork out of it.
Yeah, and when I think about my leadership practice, as a principal and a superintendent for 16 years, in that seat, every day I was looking for excellence across the board, and so that takes that shared language, building that culture that everybody's practicing on how we do things around here. So, in thinking about the challenges of doing this, kind of what should KASS be doing, and what role should we play in helping districts navigate this collectively, so superintendents aren't trying to figure this out alone?
Yeah, that's great. And thank you for having this session today. I think it's really good, and I think it says what KASS is able to do. I think KASS can help districts align, align around what I'd call principle-based AI guidance, and that doesn't rely on specific tools. So look, what we don't need in Kentucky right now is like 170 separate interpretations of AI rules. And I think KASS is in a great place to help districts converge with conversations like this about, let's say, three things: what counts as responsible instructional AI use, how to govern this privacy and data conundrum, and what the foundational expectations look like for instruction, assessment, and feedback for learners. And I think that's the kind of thing that like an association like KASS can really do. I think that would be terrific.
Well, we'll try to put more sessions like this, and so we appreciate you coming and sharing. I know you've got some resources that you're going to share here with us in just a moment. And but as we kind of close, and thinking about what good can happen, what maybe some of the challenges. But I want to leave with a hopeful perspective if we can. But what concerns you most about AI in education? But what gives you the most hope?
I think if I have any concerns, I think it's that we want generative AI in education to not be considered just the technology itself. If we do that, then we risk responding to it in a way that shrinks the trust that we want our teachers to have with our leadership and the trust we want our learners to have with our teachers. If the leaders in Kentucky start to feel pressured like they have to act fast, the instinct can be to just default to monitoring and surveillance and banning. And I think it would be great if we can admit that through through technology, one-to-one installations, COVID, that we know already how to lead through uncertainty. And AI has put some interesting uncertainty in front of us. We've navigated these shifts before. And so I think that the way we can go is seeing teachers and leaders using AI thoughtfully, not to replace the thinking of themselves and the students, but to really make time for it. And that tells me that that we're going in the right direction. So I
Yeah.
think I left one sort of mindset shift for everyone. I think it would be that AI is not a technology problem to be solved, but it's a leadership condition that's got to be stewarded. And so you all out there don't have to be an AI expert, but you do need to know enough about it to lead with clarity and consistency and care. And so I think that good leadership has always carried the day. I know that you all at KASS know this. And so I think what AI has done is just reminding us how much good leadership matters.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, that's the big challenge for us all is to find a way to lead through this and find the silver lining in this. But I know you have some excellent resources to share, and can we get that link up
Sure.
there?
Yeah, I'll put just a little slide up here. This is a QR code people can scan, and it's I put together a one page with some links that point to some of the topic areas we talked today, and people can do a little extra reading to feel a little more settled, hopefully, after this. But certainly more to talk about too, and happy to do that anytime.
Yeah, well, we've so appreciated having you with us today, and we'll be continuing this kind of conversation, in coming weeks and months because it's so timely. Superintendents and others on our program, watching our program, we'll have this on our email update next week, kind of recapping Dr. Nash's time with us today. But again, John, thank you so much, and we appreciate the partnership and look forward to that continuing. We'll also have Dr. Nash's contact information available for you, and he's been generous to welcome any of you all to contact him if you'd like some more time to learn from and with him on that. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim. It's been a delight. I love the partnership, and I hope we can keep talking.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Owens, I know you have some closing announcements, so let's turn it over to you.
Well, boy, what a session. I always love hearing from John Nash. He's just inspirational in terms of motivating around everything he deals with, but this is particularly exciting. And I'm one that sees the glass half full. And I think we can really do some amazing things moving forward. And I love the idea that it might change the way we expect students to demonstrate learning. Love that. That's even better. That's a really exciting push for the future. Want to make sure folks have these dates. You've got the breakfast coming up on February 21st. at the KSBA conference. We're looking forward to seeing everyone there. Make sure you've done that. Jim, I think registration is it's either open or about to be open for that. So that's something that we'll be looking forward to. And then the Summer Summit, a date change here, very important. We went from the 8th and 9th now to June 9th and 10th because of some potential conflicts at the Marriott City Center. But those are the dates, June 9th and 10th for the Summer Summit. Make sure you've got that on your calendar. Next, I'm really excited to share with you the registration for Synergy is now open. We're looking for it to be our highest level of professional learning. We've got really exciting plans for what's happening. We've just heard last couple of days that we'll be doing our first meeting at R.J. Corman Group in Nicholasville. And you'll watch for that information to be coming out here in the next week or so. Also, it's going to be including multipliers training. Liz Wiseman work around multipliers has now also been put together for educators, unlocking the genius in your schools. So that whole package is going to be an incredible opportunity. We're looking for some folks who are interested in that highest level of CEO and professional learning for our superintendents to be a part of that. Registration is now open, and also watch for a flood of information coming about everything around that. Some real exciting bookends around Synergy that we're really excited about sharing for the future. So that's what's on tap, Jim. Thank you very much. Appreciate that time.
All right. Well, thank you, Owens, and thanks everybody for joining us. I'll put in a quick plug. I got a text message from Dr. Lou Young, and she reminded me to share that KDE has an AI guidance document available for districts to use. So if you haven't looked at that, you might go to the KDE website and find that document to share with your teams as you navigate this topic. And then in my email update this morning, we did talk about the start of the legislative session. So starting next week, we will be sending out our legislative update via email. And then starting next Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, we'll be doing our KASS legislative Zoom call and invite you all to jump on that call and hear updates from what's going on at Frankfurt. And so look forward to that, and look forward to a great second semester. You know, Kentucky's been a shining star on major research findings out of Stanford and Harvard universities as one of the top states in education recovery since the pandemic. The release of the test scores showed continued progress. And one message that we have to make sure everyone knows, particularly our policymakers in Frankfurt, that wasn't accidental. It took a lot of work from a lot of entities. And one big factor was the General Assembly's investment in the budget policy that they put forward in recent years, and the enactment of some smart education policies. So we need to continue to challenge them on that front. The governor introduced his budget proposal. That obviously that will certainly change as it goes through the General Assembly, but at least it sets a bar out there. Also, the new assessment and accountability policy dropped. Representative out of, I think his name's TJ Roberts, dropped that bill. And so we'll be giving some more information on that coming up. Barry Lee's working on his tracking document that he does such a great job with. So be looking for lots of information coming out of Frankfurt, but we're already starting to track lots of bills. And if you need any information, don't hesitate to reach out. We got Greg Coker, of course, always helping us up there in Frankfurt, and is available to provide his expertise and strategic approach to being effective there. And with some changes at the Capitol with the renovations and all that, there's some information in the update on what to look for there. So notably, parking may be even more of a premium. So don't get there late is the kind of the advice. But anyway, thanks for joining us today. Have a great rest of your Friday and an even better weekend. Take care, everyone.